Hey, everybody. I wanted to take a second or two and talk to you a little bit about Rogers and this idea of reflecting. Just kind of looking at some of your responses and skill setter and really thinking about my experience with counselors trying to develop this. It's something that I think is really kind of hard to just read about. And and so I want to give you not only what I would say it's kind of the heart of Rogers. I want to maybe push you towards another theory and maybe expand on this and kind of bring it to something that's applicable now, right? Because you need this skill. I would say this is probably the most critical skill you can come up with. I was teaching a advanced clinical cognitive class, and I spent the first week on Rogers. And and I tell you, Rogers is the basis, I think, for almost any other theory, regardless if you're behavioral or CBT or Gestalt, attachment, dynamics, whatever it might be, even solution focused. There's this essence of how do I connect with this person? It's I always, kind of talk, that whole Jesus take the wheel. Well, somebody's got to hold on to the wheel in order to drive a car. If you can't get a hold of that wheel and really understand where it is that you're going and what's happening, nothing good is going to occur in a moving car with no one holding on to the wheel. And so Rogers gives us this really unique ability to understand that lived experience of the other individual in the room. And so I think that it's one of the most critical. I think it's run over very quickly early on in theories classes, such as this one. And so I wanted to spend some time on it. I think one of the more important parts is that I think this idea of reflection really looks different at different points in the lifespan from a child, how you might approach a child and reflect versus how you may approach a human. And so I put over here to my right PCIT. This is a very researched intervention. I've been trained in it. It's really amazing, and I think that it really propelled my ability to work with children, adolescents, and even some adults um, more than many of the other trainings that I've completed. And so this is PCIT, really one of the biggest interventions in this parent-child intervention therapy is this idea of reflection. So in this concept, there's praising, labeled praises, where when a child does something, you immediately connect with them by saying exactly what it is that they did. So they're building Legos, and you say, "Great job building Legos." So a label praise is much better than "great job," because at that moment the child may not know what's going on that I did well. Was it playing with Legos? Was it sitting still? Was it what? So being very specific in our label praises. The second thing is reflections, which we'll talk more about. Imitating is just a way of uh, um, behavior modification, if nothing else, to demonstrate to children, what it is that they're doing, which is good, and then verbally just describing, being enthusiastic about it. I'm going to put a video that goes into more depth on PCIT, but for anyone who is interested in working with children, school counselors, really being familiar and getting great with PCIT skills, the Pride skills is amazing. It will propel you to new heights and really push your development as a counselor. And so I definitely, any intern or practicum student or licensure student that I've ever supervised, I've always really encouraged a good working knowledge. And so the other thing that I really wanted to talk to you about is your tone of voice. I have my trusty set of Legos because object lesson. Oftentimes, what people understand as a reflection is just parroting. Get it? I don't really want you to parrot. Um, Early on the child side over here, sometimes parroting can be like a description or a praise um, type, praise type response because you're engaged, because you're attuned to them. I think that that's a great thing. And so I just want to talk to you about like your tone of voice. And I have this example right here where a kiddo says, I am building Legos. Now, reflecting, you could say, I am building Legos or you are building Legos. And that's just this flat kind of, it is a reflection, and it is kind of parroting, right? You're supposed to be somewhat enthusiastic, especially with children, because of that energy and they get excited and they feel delighted in. And that's a really important concept, delighting in children. It's rooted in attachment theory, which we'll talk about later on, probably in theories too. Um, and so I want to go over two different ways. And again, we're just talking tone of voice. So doing a reflection, we could say, you are building Legos. And so you hear that enthusiasm. And what I want to point out is your voice, the volume literally just kind of goes up. Now it can be, you can emphasize the R2, you are building Legos. You are building Legos. Vastly different communication from you are building Legos. You're building Legos. Did you reflect? Yes. But what's the difference in you are building Legos? Different communication. There's a different intensity to it. Now, the second thing that I want to talk to you a little bit about, and this is where people get confused. If you trail down at the end of your sentence, so I am building Legos, you are building Legos, Legos, it comes across as a question. And now for a kiddo, immediately I have an adult who is questioning me. You are building Legos? Kid begins to think, am I doing something right? Am I acceptable? Should I stop? Am I in trouble? Am I going to lose the Legos? What's about to happen? There's a question. How am I supposed to respond to that? And, and when we do that, what we see is the anxiety in kids kind of begins to creep up, and then behavior problems will tend to creep up too. And so on this side, on the child side, you are building Legos, kind of that down. Sometimes that's not exactly what it is that we want to do. That's not really helping us attune and connect with the kiddo. The second side of it, on the adult side, I'm going to jump to the PowerPoints really quickly and just talk a little bit more about Carl Rogers. There we have Dr. Rogers. this idea of reflecting. His idea of that humanistic ideas of like always being in the process, that becoming is this ongoing journey. Like nobody ever really truly arrives. We're always kind of in progress. And so when he thinks about a fully functioning person, he's thinking about people who are open to experience, positive and negative. We're not denying experiences. We're kind of leaning into those experiences, um, and we're in touch with those experiences. We're not judging them. We're not having preconceptions about experiences that we might have. We're not looking backwards. We're not looking forwards. We're kind of in the moment, right? And so we're not looking forward or back in the moment, in this moment. Being is like a now thing. We're going to trust those feelings. We want to understand some of those gut reactions, um, and really think about what it is that is occurring within us. Um, it's okay to take risk. Um, if you play it safe all the time, if you prevent yourself from experiencing an emotion, that's something that's limiting, if you will. So, kind of embracing again the positive, the negative, and this idea of a fulfilled life. A person is happy and satisfied with life, and always looking for new challenges and experiences. So again, happiness isn't like a destination. It's this continuous journey because we're always becoming, we're always progressing. I'll say that when you take marriage and family therapy, there's this idea of homeostasis, and in current theory, current researchers are really pushing back about any kind of concept of homeostasis, or like having a state that you're always in. Um, when it comes to pathology, he really looked back to conditional love of the parents, and this was his real life experience. And so he kind of had this idea of, because love was so conditional, how can I provide unconditional positive regard towards others? And then if there's incongruence between what is experienced and what it is that you perceive yourself is, that's a right place for pathology to occur. And then psychopathology is really a divided person, or maybe even just a lack of wholeness and congruence throughout that person. Now, I'm sure you've read stuff and you know a lot of this. Here's a quote. There are things that I would like for you to like really truly memorize. And this isn't about passing a test. This isn't any of that. This is what I hope that you take this, you write it down, you post it in the hallway of your mind, and walk by often. Don't forget this. Roger said, "When you criticize me, I intuitively dig in to defend myself. When you accept me like I am, I suddenly am willing to change." And I want you to think about that for a second. When you're challenged, when you are confronted, sometimes those defenses can come up, and we want to go, no, like I don't want to accept that. Um I don't agree with that, or it doesn't fit really who I think I am. But where Rogers is going with this is, but when people accept you, the good, the bad, the feelings that may not be appropriate, or even the thoughts, there is an acceptance that happens where you are joining with, you're grabbing hold of that will, and you can, begin to think of where this might go. But it's through acceptance of these things that you really form connection. And now I kind of wanted to go through this because we're going to get over here on the adult side. Rogers had this idea of reflection and the idea of what therapeutic reflection really could be, and it changed. And I'm just going to tell you, I used to make students read this excessively long journal article because I thought it was so important. I'm not going to do that. But what I will say is this is from that article. Rogers in '86 finally came to this conclusion. He asserted that his goal in responding to his clients is not repeating their feelings, but to ascertain whether his understanding of their subjective experience, this isn't really like that objective. Subjective is kind of what we believe and feel and experience, and it's subject to our understanding. You'll see this idea of subjectivity in your work with individuals with PTSD, because everybody in the room may feel completely safe, but somebody who might have experienced a traumatic event could see, smell, hear something that makes them feel subjectively unsafe. So we're really trying to understand that client's subjective experience. And reflection really is not the point. Now, I know you're doing assignments and we get skill setters and everything else, but hear me out here. Rogers contended that to be effective, a reflection must include two implicit communications in addition to the explicit restatement of the client's felt experiences. Okay? So, leave this for just a second. So those two other things are right here. Is what I am saying now precisely accurate for your client? And it's not necessarily just the content. If you say the content right back to them, they said that. They know what they said. They know what it was. In that sense, and we don't want this. Parents, over here for the children. What's really being said? What's really being said, and I want you to really think about this, it's not always what they're saying. Sometimes it's how they're saying and kind of the meaning behind what it is that they're saying. And so this second part, I think, takes some work on our part. It takes some work for us to be vulnerable enough, humble enough, willing to serve enough to be wrong, and to be okay being wrong, because by being wrong, sometimes that helps us be more right later. And so the second part is, if what I'm reflecting back isn't perfectly precise, help me revise my perception so it is closer to your own. Help me, correct me, so that I can really truly understand your lived experience. For Rogers, it was like trying to get so close to understanding and feeling what it was like to be your client. It was as if you were that person, but maintaining that you are not. That last sentence is it's really important. As if you are, but realizing that you're not. You get it, but you remember that you didn't do it, you didn't experience it. Those aren't your thoughts. You just understand that person that well. So on this side, and this is where it can get confusing, asking or giving reflections can almost take a form of, I'm sorry, doing reflections can almost take the form of doing a question. So in a couple of your skill sets, there's one individual who is so mad because all these workers were doing everything wrong, and then he had to go to counseling. They're the ones doing everything wrong. Why do I have to go to counseling? So it really wasn't about like what other people were doing wrong. There was just a genuine feeling of injustice. I don't understand why is it that why is everybody looking at me? They're doing something wrong. And so think about that reflection on the feeling of frustration. Um, Another person was talking about child support and seeing his daughter, and um, some of you kind of got that because he actually said, "I'm frustrated." So he actually says that to an extent, and so some people got that, like, so you're feeling frustrated, and that's a reflection. He gave you content, but really the process going on inside of him was this sincere feeling of frustration. But my guess is there might be some sadness there. He's not seeing his daughter. There could be other things going on. And so reflections can take this form of, so understand that you're feeling a lot of frustration. And when you question, like, I will clarify, help me be right here, help me be more precise. You're not parroting, you're curious. You're not curious or in a, you did what? That's judgmental, right? And we're not going to judge. You're pushing people away when you do that. But a curiosity in that, all right, like, is it frustration? Maybe a reflection could be somewhere along the lines of, when I'm listening to what's going on, I hear frustration on one hand, but I don't help me understand. I also hear a sense of sadness. Now he's thinking, yeah, frustration, but now I'm also going to bring up this other part of me. Remember congruence. There is a sadness going on. I'm not seeing my daughter. One day she'll want to see me. Again, there's some frustration, but there's some sadness that he's going to have to wait. And so you're trying to really delve deep to understand. Um, and so this is the last thing I want to do. I'm going to read a couple excerpts from his book. The book is On Becoming a Person. It's a pretty thick book. I read it. I think that, typically it's cheap. I think that if you Google, there's a PDF of this book out there on Google someplace. I'm not going to ask you to avoid copyrights or anything of that nature. But I will say that the way Rogers writes is a little unique, and sometimes it can be hard to read. I think that what you're getting in this video and in other areas is good. If you want to read that, great, go for it. Do I think that you have to read it to be a good therapist? No, no. But there are books out there that when I come across, I go, you really need to read this. It's like Frankel's Man's Search for Meaning. Man, you should really read that. That's just an amazing book and really important. All right. And so I'm going to share my screen again. And this is from Roger's book on becoming a person. And I'm going to go through and read these questions. Listen to the heart behind the question. Don't listen to the question, listen to the heart behind the question. This sense of humility and honestly, like, sincere desire to connect with somebody else. See if I can find it. Here we go. All right. I'm going to try and move this little square out of the way. So here's the first question, and please forgive me if I need to pause and get a drink. Um, First question: can I be in some way which will be perceived by the other person as trustworthy, as dependable or consistent in some deep sense? Can I be? Can you be? Can you be perceived as trustworthy? Remember, we don't judge. We're not prescribing. We're not even asserting that there's judgment. There's just a deep curiosity, and as we're curious, we're also being accepting. We're not rejecting it. When we reject, we kind of push away. But when we're curious, we're leaning in. We're opening up our hearts and our minds to try and understand, not that we may think that way, but to really understand how it is that they are thinking. The second question, a very close related question, is this: can I be expressive enough as a person that what I am will be communicated unambiguously? This is a really neat thing. You know, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, and I will say appropriately vulnerable, um, there is a connection. You know, sometimes this connection, this therapeutic rapport that we kind of clinically term it, oftentimes they do feel connected to us, and we feel connected to them because we understand. And I think there's a vulnerability of being able to be wrong, because quite honestly, there is that differentiation. You know, we want to be just as human and be on equal footing. And then sometimes in some therapeutic processes, maybe we take a step down even. But we are the therapist. They are compensating us. And so trying to be vulnerable and not have to have all the answers, really allowing them to put the bricks down in their own yellow brick road, so to speak, can be humbling, but it's also a really good thing to be open and vulnerable about that. The third question is, can I let myself experience positive attitudes towards this other person? Attitudes of warmth, caring, liking, interest, and respect. Again, there are going to be clients that you may not think of as, wow, I could have absolutely been this person's best friend. You may not even like them, but regardless of that, can you still have the attitude of warmth, caring, liking, interest, concern, curiosity? Another question, the importance of which I have learned in my own experience, is, can I be strong enough as a person to be separate from the others? And this is just very quickly that I need to understand to the depths that I can without kind of stepping over that line and thinking that of it as me. I understand it, but that's not me. That's not my experience. 5, the next question is closely related. Am I secure enough within myself to permit him his separateness? Um, and I think that that one is important. We need to allow them to experience whatever it is that they're experiencing, feel, think, without forcing our own ideas, feelings, behaviors. This is kind of that Don't tell people what to do. Don't tell them how to feel. Don't tell them what they're thinking. Be okay with just being curious and being able to be corrected. 6, can I let myself enter fully into the world of his feelings and personal meanings and see these as he does? Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes the experiences that our clients have can be hard to fully enter into and really be okay with some of those experiences. This is, I think, an important part of self-care, and really just being self-aware. Question 7, can I communicate? Oops, I'm sorry. Can I receive him as he is? Can I communicate this attitude? Um, you might have heard of Brene Brown. If not, please look her up. Watch the TED Talks on that she gives. They're great. We never want our client to feel ashamed of what it is that they've done, they've thought, or they've felt. And so, can I receive my client just the way that they are? 8, can I act with sufficient sensitivity in the relationship that my behavior will not be perceived as a threat? I think we've talked a lot about that already. Can I free in the client? Can I free him from the threat of external evaluation? Goes back to some of the initial trustworthiness, that they can feel safe with you to the extent that they don't even consider that they're ever going to be evaluated by you. All right, last question. Can I meet this other individual as a person who is in process of becoming? Or will I be bound by his past and by my past? Do your own work, understand those sensitive areas. Are we ever perfect and have no maybe difficult buttons that are hit? No, we're always in process. We're in process, they're in process. And I think that, what Rogers is really communicating to us is that it's okay. It's really okay. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. We have bad days, and that's really okay. We just kind of lean into those experiences. We're very accepting of those experiences. We learn from them, but nobody is perfect. Nobody's really expecting anybody to be perfect. So, some of the early article or some of the early discussions, you were talking about this, and someone, well, not just someone, but there was the questions of, how do I integrate this? What does this look like as far as spirituality, or maybe ideas of sacredness, whatever that religion might be for you. And so, I don't know, maybe you've seen it. There's a screw up here and a $300 mark. And so I'll tell you this story. It's just a small parable. It's not a big deal, but once upon a time, there was a very wealthy individual who had this important machine, and it didn't work, and it was costing his business a lot of money. So he called up the repairman. The repairman came out. He took a look at the machine, took out a screw, put the screw in, turned the machine back on, worked perfectly. And the repairman said $300. And the rich man said, "You were here less than 30 seconds. Why am I giving you $300? And he said, "Well, the screw cost $1. Knowing where and how to fix your machine with this screw, it's $299. What Rogers' theory does for us as counselors, regardless of what theory you decide is like your end all be all theory, tells you where to put the screw, how to do it, how are we going to adjust things in such a way that we're accurate, and that accurate understanding of the human experience, the uniqueness, the variety. We got the best job in the world because you're never going to get bored. Rogers gives us this curiosity to go on an adventure and to understand how somebody else is becoming, what the journeys look like. And then when we understand, um, and as we understand, they begin to get their own insights. And so, regardless of what theory you decide to kind of settle down in, maybe it's CBT, maybe it's Gestalt, um, to me, Rogers really helps you take hold of the wheel. It helps you connect, gives you the therapeutic rapport that when difficult things are being discussed, it feels safe, that they know that you care. So, just to recap, there are some times where parenting is okay, other times, not so much. When we talk about a middle ground of adolescence, personally, my experience is a little bit of both goes a long way. Um, and so the last thing I'll tell you is if you want to see really Rogers doing this in action, make sure you watch the Rogers video, 1965. He does a therapy session with Gloria, and you can Google it, Carl Rogers Gloria video. I've tried to post links on this, and every time the links are changing or there's some kind of uh, words running across the bottom, and most of them the quality is really poor. But definitely listen to this idea that even though Gloria asked him for specific information, that's not that's not his. He's there to understand her journey, not to put his bricks on her yellow brick road. So hopefully this has been a little helpful, some hopefully clarifying as well. Practice this. Practice your voice going up or going down, depending on who and what you're doing. It's a really important skill set, just the tone of your voice. And make sure that you're not repeating the whole thing. Get to that core of really what's going on. Last thing, I'll do one last thing, and then I promise to let you go. If you don't know, social emotional learning, I'd really encourage you to begin to think about it. I'll just say think about it. This is Castle. It's really a wonderful resource and can give you some structure in treatment planning. And in the other big thing is feelings. Um, like your ability to increase your feeling vocabulary will really help other people increase theirs. And by using words besides just love, fear, anger, you look sad, you look surprised, you look happy, you look loved, you look scared. Really looking at things like um, nervous or exasperated or irritable, shameful, neglected, elated, proud, you know, tender, caring, euphoric, hurt, displeased, dismayed, frustrated was one that y'all ran into a lot. As you begin to use these words, you're really helping your client understand and be able to communicate their lived experience a little bit better. So I will encourage you to take a look at these, and that is all. Thank you so much, and I hope this was helpful.